Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone to our January 16th, and it's the 2024, first meeting of the year, 2024. And I will call to order and start for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the public comment. If there's anyone here that wants to come before the board, any item that is not on our agenda, please come forward at this time. And not seeing anybody, everybody else is here for the agenda items. And now we're looking at approval of the agenda. To suggest one change, we move approval of the new CAC members ahead of the programs and project update. With that change, is there a motion to approve that agenda?
So that would be 4.2 and 4.3.
Would move go ahead of programs and projects. Anybody want to?
So moved.
Motion made by Manager Boyle, seconded by Manager Burnett. Any more discussion? Not he.
Anything else?
There's something else.
There was a
Consent item. That's right.
Oh. Very good.
When we get to the consent, we'll move that. Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. So with that, we're going to go to approval of our new CAC members, Amy Butani, is that right? And Richard Sherbert. And CAC Chair Lauren Hanson, do you want to introduce our new members?
My name is Lauren Hanson. I'm the chairman of the CAC, and I'm happy to be here tonight to introduce two new members and advance our recommendations to the board. I'll start with Amy Butani. Amy has lived in the district for 20 years. In 2010, she lived on Spring Lake and was president of the Spring Lake Association, and she now lives on Fish Lake, and we feel that she would be a very good asset to the CAC and to the watershed district as a whole with her experience. And with that, I will forward my recommendation from the CAC to the board, and I will also have Amy come up and introduce herself and tell a little more of her background and why she wants to be on the CAC.
Warm greetings to everybody, familiar faces, new faces. I'm Amy Butani. I'm very happy to be here, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to once again serve the community and make sure that we're looking out for our water and our community members the best we can and be stewards of, graciously grant us in living in this county. And so thank you.
Sure. Okay, all right. So unfortunately, Richard couldn't be here tonight. He, I believe, has COVID, so he is not here, but I will tell you a little bit about him. Dick Sherber has lived in the district for 8 years and lived in Lower Prior Lake. He recently retired and is looking to get involved within the community. Dick has been involved in other volunteer organizations, including a resident focus group for a bike trail and a group that supports families dealing with rare diseases. And with his experience and networking, we feel that he would be a very good asset to both the CAC and the Watershed District. So I heartily recommend, advance his recommendation from the CAC to the board.
Good, thank you. Sounds like we have two really good candidates coming on the CAC.
I move that we appoint each of them
Okay,
to 3-year terms. I think the length of the term is laid out later in the packet.
okay. It's a motion to approve Amy Butani and Richard Sherber to the
Second.
CAC. Second by Manager Morkenberg. Any more discussion on these items? Okay, not seeing or hearing any.
No, I just wanted to welcome you and look forward to working with you.
Okay, very good. And yes, we sure thank you for your volunteerism. So all in favor of these two people being on our CDC, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you and welcome. Okay, next item is going to go over our programs and projects update from staff.
All right, for the projects and programs update, January 16th, we'll start off with lake level graphing. The 2023 prior lake year-end elevation ended at 898.88, roughly half a foot higher than it did the previous year. And for Spring Lake, the elevation was 909.57, around a quarter of a foot higher than the previous year. Staff has some cleanup on the graphs to do to make our graphing look clean and neat, and that will be a priority over the next month. Our historic ice over observations had continued through and into January. Our observers declared January 7th the ice over on Upper Prior Lake. This was, in our records, the latest ice over since 1966. Lower Prior Lake was January 8th, along with Fish Lake, and Spring Lake concluded on the 7th. So overall, a later trend for ice over. As talked about last month, with our water quality results being complete, our water quality report cards were worked on this previous month. Lower Prior Lake continues to have excellent water quality, A for phosphorus, chlorophyll, and clarity, similar to last year's 3-year grade observations. And phosphorus is improving, and that is a significant trend. For Upper Prior Lake, again, similar to last year, over the 3-year grading period, phosphorus, chlorophyll, and clarity are receiving A's. And over the 10-year trends, all 3 of these state water quality standards are improving. It's tremendous compared if you're looking back at, even when that 10-year trend started, these water quality indicators were not meeting state water quality standards. That's a huge improvement. For Spring Lake, the rating is the same as last year's 3-year grades. We're improving in phosphorus and chlorophyll A over a 10-year trend significantly. Fish Lake has grades for phosphorus a C, and that is the same as last year, although chlorophyll A and clarity improved from a grade of a D. All 3 water quality indicators are showing improvements, significant improvements in 10 years. For Pike Lake West, the grade for phosphorus decreased, went from a C to a D. Chlorophyll A remains in A, and clarity has, similar to last year, been impacted by vegetation. Those readings were able to be collected. Either the bottom being the Secchi disk meeting the bottom or vegetation impacting the readings. Phosphorus indicator is declining and a significant factor, and chlorophyll A is improving. There's a few ways we can look at this from Pike Lake west. It's influenced by the outlet channel. So water enters Pike West from Lower Prior Lake. So Lower Prior Lake's water quality is excellent, and Pike Lake West's water quality is a big factor compared to whether or not there's flow. Pike Lake East, on the other hand, has quite poor water quality. Chlorophyll A this year improved, and clarity decreased. So phosphorus is signaling a significant declining trend. So overall, I guess one to highlight here would be Upper Prior Lakes, 3 significantly improving indicators. That's great to see.
Jeff? What would you attribute these improvements? I mean, is it the drought, or just what would be reason, or if you can, for these trends being improving on some of these lakes?
BMPs, long-term BMP installations, alum treatments on Upper Spring, and then impacting Upper Prior Lake, and then Upper Prior Lake.
So we're seeing some improvement to our alum treatments we did a few years ago.
Certainly residual.
Okay.
We've been seeing out in the field, vegetation has been expanding significantly in the lakes, which has that positive, feedback. Clarity can be improved by zebra mussels in Spring Lake. That's something that we can't discount, because those have been expanding quite a bit this last year. On the big lakes, Fish, Spring, Upper and Lower, it's tough to say whether or not what the drought's total impact. Less runoff could, if that runoff's quite dirty, it's
Mm-hmm. Right.
gonna have,
It's a combination of things, what you're saying.
certainly.
Okay, thanks.
Moving from the report, Christian.
Yes, so thank you for the report, and I think one thing that's exciting too is we just finished a fish lake management plan, which means we now know that we have some very concrete proposal for improving fish lake further, which means fish lake, which is already improving, if we were able to implement some concrete steps that we have, could very well get even better very quickly and possibly very quickly. So I think these are all good things that we're looking at here, and let's keep it up.
Certainly. Manager Markelberg, Fish Lake's grade here as a C is roughly it's around average, I'd say, for how parameters are calculated. So because Fish Lake is not meeting the state's water quality standards, or has not been historically, although this year is, the first time that's happened in 12 years, I think. So it is indicating that these are all improving very slowly over the last 10 years. So, like last year, I presented an alum update on a question that we ask ourselves: what do we do next? So, kind of stems from Upper Prior Lake's 2020 alum treatment. So, as staff and board managers, the question is, what does the future look like? So we want to monitor the water quality results, surface and bottom. And typically what you conduct sediment coring, determine what the release rate is, what the sediment and current alum is doing. Is it being used? And then you would recalculate future dosing rates. So to step back for a bit here, in June 2020, Upper Prior Lake received a 60% total dose alum treatment. And the plan was to get 5 years of full life at a minimum with this first application. In the image on the right, you can see the zones, and certain zones received higher or lower dosing recommendation. And a little bit of history on Spring Lake. In 2013, they received 50% dose. It was completed at 50% dose. In 2018, 25, and 2020, the last 25% from the initial recommendation. So what did this alum treatment get us? Well, in Upper Prior Lake, that box, so that red box, shows the results that this is the annual surface average over the growing season. It reduced chlorophyll and total phosphorus significantly, allowing the lake to meet state water quality standards. And this is what we monitor throughout the year. We also monitor the bottom of the lake, and I'll get to that shortly. The bottom shows more of an immediate response. In Spring Lake, these boxes are shown over each year where the dosing occurred. All right, now this is what the bottom total phosphorus looks like. Samples were collected near the bottom, and you would typically see a higher total phosphorus value. The bottom sediments hold more phosphorus. So in 2020, that treatment occurred, and you can see in the orange graph line that the results and values decreased dramatically. So if we're thinking about what to do next, Steve McComas made sort of an interesting chart that is more of a loose guideline on how to evaluate some of these numbers that we're seeing. And it basically says at low values, bottom versus top phosphorus, it's not an issue. It's good water quality. And as those values rise, you would have moderate total phosphorus release and moderate water quality. And as that, when you're seeing very high total phosphorus values in that 600 to 1,000 micrograms per liter, something's going on. There's a problem. There's typically algal blooms and severe water quality impairments. So kind of circling back here with Upper Prior Lake, those jumped down. But we're, if we're looking at this over the course of the year, we're currently seeing between 37 and 100 micrograms per liter, which puts us in this slight problem range. So, do we have time to continue letting the lake respond? Perhaps.
Quick question. So the peak quick question. So the peaks that we see throughout the years, is that typically midsummer when you look at the bottom phosphorus?
Yes,
Not in the spring, not in the fall, but midsummer?
where you're seeing those high values.
Yep.
Yeah, and even throughout the year, you would see that increase.
Yes, but you can see here, it's like every year there's a peak.
Oh,
So I'm just looking at, it looks like that's midsummer to August, something like that. Is that correct?
yes, you're seeing so in each individual sort of spike,
Yep.
left would be spring. And as those dots, each dot represents the next 2 weeks. So it's a 2-week measurement. And as that, you're seeing each dot kind of go up, it sort of progresses throughout the summer season. And then it would drop, and then this would be, if you can see my mouse on the screen, you would see sometime April, May, June, July.
Yep. I think that's what we typically see, and I think when we did the fish lake management study, it actually showed a different picture, which was they saw like early spring and late fall, high, low, bottom phosphorus, which was different than what we typically see in this, what is what you would expect to see, right?
Correct.
Yep. Thank you.
Sorry, the computer's freezing up right now. Okay. So, you know, what's interesting about the situation is that if Upper Prior Lake is having a slow response, what is Spring Lake doing? Conduct the same water quality sampling on all our tier 1 lakes. Red circles represent when alum treatments occurred. So in Spring Lake, on the bottom left graph, you'll see that phosphorus result average, it drops. And since 2020, that result is going up. And it's currently around 300 micrograms per where Upper Prior Lake is this year at around 110, 120. And then on the bottom right, you would see where Fish Lake has had that consistently annual average lake bottom total phosphorus. So all of this sort of some thought that staff board and our engineers will be looking to think about when it comes to planning for our next alum treatment. Like President Loney mentioned, you know, there's a management plan moving forward, and where would be the next best place to implement a project. So staff are in works with our engineering firm, EOR and Carl, on when to conduct sediment coring next, as sediment coring is a precursor to when a next alum treatment might occur, and sediment coring can give us a good idea of what the release rates of the current phosphorus. It can tell us whether this alum is getting covered in sediment, what sort of life is left in that in the current application that's on the lake bed. Sediment coring is also very useful in determining what the next dosing rate would be, and give us and the engineers ideas on what the next lifetime of the future application would look like. So we will be working with EOR on data analysis and what our 2023 data tells us. We can look towards the end of 2024, once we've received that data, to look for future recommendations. Either way, we'll be conducting coring during our seasons, 2024 or later, to help us guide what that next location or treatment specifications might be. And as a note here, Upper Prior Lake was a Bowser grant, and we did an assurance requirement to meet a 10-year effective life on that 2020 application. So more to come on alum and what our current lakes and statuses results will tell us. So I know this was a topic at the board retreat, so much to think about here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on Jeff's report? No. Okay. Project status update, is that Emily?
That's me. So I'm going to keep it pretty because the project world is in transition. We just completed Swamp Lake and Fish Lake studies and are doing reporting, annual reporting, grant reporting, closeout, and kind of starting transition to beginning the project cycle on several projects we've been discussing prioritizing in board workshops. So here are a few that are still in the streamline. We'll touch on Prior Lake outlet pipelining and some partnership opportunities with Soil and Water Conservation District. Experiencing the same lag too. There we go. As some of you know who were present, we today presented to the Senate bonding tour, and we presented to the House of Representatives bonding tour back in October, and that was on behalf of our request for $2 million for pipelining our Prior Lake outlet pipe. That would make our pipe more efficient in getting water out quickly and just restore the quality of the pipe to extended time. So the district has been working with the cooperators to do all due diligence to be construction ready. We've completed our construction documents pretty much to the point that you can without knowing the start date due to funding. We'll be hearing back on the bonding funds. That'll be announced at the end of session in spring 2024. So we're hopeful there and looking forward to moving forward with this project, hopefully to construct in winter 2024, 2025. Another project that is in preliminary stages is the Buck Stream restoration. This project was identified in the Upper Watershed Blueprint. Soil and Water Conservation District has some clean water funds that are eligible for this project type, so up to $75,000 we could use on implementing this. The project would look at restoring a pretty highly eroded bank that would go through 3 landowners' properties. Right now, we've had our consultant out, and we're looking at estimating the cost and level of effort and building that out so we can make a timeline. The grant funding that we would utilize to do this would need to complete the project this year. So if it's looking like it will fit our budget and that, then it would be a quick implement. And right now this stream reach is contributing quite a lot of sediment because none of it is secured. So here's a picture of just a steep bank like that.
Emily, I have a question. I mean, looking at the picture, obviously there's quite a bit of has been moved. Is there a big delta in Buck Lake then? Has anybody looked at that? Or part of our project, would that remove some of that dirt that's in the lake?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of Buck Lake. That hasn't been discussed as part of the project, but you're correct that there is quite a lot.
The dirt went somewhere.
Yeah, and it continues to go. Any flow at all is going to rush it away.
Okay. I was just thinking maybe part of the project might be removing a delta, but,
Yep. That could also be a second phase. Based on initial conversations, to do this project quickly, and within the budget, we can do the stream restoration, but that's probably the amount that we could accomplish.
okay.
Manager Merkelberg.
So are the landowners in agreement?
They've been involved in initial conversations, but now that we have had the engineer out and have an idea that it is feasible, Soil and Water will be going back and confirming, yep, are you still on board? Is this a concept you'd be interested in? And that'll be part of that initial step of understanding that we can take this to completion.
And are there any regulations that says that if there is this degree of erosion from a stream, it has to be dealt with?
Oh, I'm not
just asking.
Yeah, I'm not aware of them. In fact, I think as part of our project planning, we've been talking about, will we be able to get this permitted to do the restoration? The outlook is very positive, but you have to have permits to do stream restoration to repair. Great. Okay. Yep, so short report today. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions from anybody else?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, very good, thank you. We are moving on then to item 4.4, 2023 Watercraft Inspection Report. I assume you guys are with that group, so welcome. And I assume you're going to give
Bruce,
us a
I'll
report.
give Ben here an introduction. So Ben Brandt with Waterfront Restorations has been coordinating the district's boat inspections for the past several years. So boat inspections have occurred on Lower Prior Lake, Upper Prior Lake, Spring Lake, and Fish Lake. These occur from roughly May through September this year into October. There's a whole data set that Ben will be presenting on and give us information on the process of the boat inspections and how they're used to improve our state's AIS control. And I'll give it up to Ben and I'll load the presentation.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District board members. This is our third year being contracted by the Watershed District to provide watercraft inspector full service staffing services to the Watershed District. I have submitted a report that is on the screen now and in your board packet. It's 36 pages that encompasses all the data and happenings of our watercraft inspection season inspection program this season, as well as some historical data over the last 3 years that you've contracted with us. And so I'm going to start on page 3 and cover the first part of the report as a high-level overview of what took place within the watershed this year. And the middle of the report is an individual lake-by-lake breakdown. I think for the sake of time, we'll skip over that tonight unless you guys have specific questions you'd like to ask. I can dig into it. And then the back third of the report, pages 29 through 35, are a summary of the results, trends, that we've seen over the past 3 seasons of working with you guys. So to start, here on page 3, we have a table that summarizes each of the 4 lakes that we were contracted to provide watercraft inspectors at. And the middle column shows the number of inspections completed at each of those launches, as well as the inspector hours of staffing there. So our inspectors started with coverage this season on May 13th, which was the Saturday of Minnesota's fishing opener, and we concluded on October 7th this fall. So we had some unseasonably warm weather that allowed us to do some weekend-only staffing late into the boating season. totaled up to 3,856 inspections completed, over 1,011 inspector hours, which was the full amount that you guys had hired us for this season. I do want to call out the partnership that we've established with the DNR's watercraft inspection program. It's an important part of the value that is there for the inspection program within the water. My staffing strategy is intertwined with the DNR. They share their schedule with Jeff and the staff, who then shares. I will adjust our schedule so that we have our contracted inspectors at the same launch at the same time as the DNR's inspectors. So we give that flexibility in order to just maximize the value. And this season, most of the time, the DNR's inspectors were on Lower Prior Lake. So towards the back of the report, you'll see some of the results that I pulled from their inspection surveys, submissions, and overlaid it with ours. So we 3,856. The DNR completed 5,062 inspections within the same 4 lakes. They have quite a few more than we do, simply because they primarily just staff the Lower Prior Lake launch. That's much busier than Fish or Spring Lake or Upper Prior Lake launch. Turning to page 4, the first pie chart there is a summary of the type of watercrafts that we've inspected in 2023. It's a pretty even balance there. 35% of the inspections were on fishing boats and 30% on runabouts, or recreational boats. And that's a pretty even split between those two categories of water. I've seen some locations and counties where 70-75% fishing boats and a much smaller percentage of runabouts. So the other type of watercraft that is more common in this watershed district than some of the other locations is wake sport boats with ballast tanks that were inspected 9% of the time this season. The second pie chart is the time out of water before entering for that specific watercraft. So we like to see a high percentage of watercraft that have been out of the water 8 days or more. That's the state DNR's recommended dry time for watercraft as a scientifically proven length of time that is most likely to AIS that is being transported on the watercraft. Related equipment is dead and not a viable new introduction to a new. Good to see that 75% of the boaters across the watershed that were inspected this year had been out of the water for at least 5 days. The percent in the same pie chart is represented by the blue chart there. That is the number of boaters that were out of the water for less than 24 hours, and that was 261 entering watercrafts that you could call lake hopping, or were on a different body of water on this launching Friday, Saturday, and Sunday without that longer dry time. So a little bit higher risk doesn't mean that they are spreading AIS. It's just if you're not looking for it, not being thorough with your clean, drain, dry process, they can pose a higher risk to spreading invasive species. Turning to page 5, this is during every inspection, the inspector enters the vehicle's license plate that is towing the watercraft. Predominantly, almost all of them are Minnesota state license plates, but we do also make note here in this bar graph of the out-of-state vehicles that are towing and launching watercraft in the watershed district lakes. And really for the fact that Minnesota has a unique set of AIS state statutes that not every state has, and they also have different threats in different states. So you can see we had 12 boats that launched with vehicles from Wisconsin, 11 from Iowa, and 7 from Florida, South Dakota, and Texas. So some of those southeastern states do have invasive species that haven't yet been introduced into Minnesota. So like Florida, Alabama, hydrilla is a common AIS species down there that, again, has not been introduced in Minnesota, and we want to keep it that way. So just some interesting data provided by the inspection process there. And then the last pie graph on this page is just a breakdown of where our inspector staffing allocation was spent. All right, turning to page 6, these two bar graphs break down the inspections that we've completed by month, and then further break down into inspections by week. So the top bar graph is the orange dot is the number of inspector hours that we worked that month, and then the bar is the number of inspections completed in those respective months. So, you can see it was a nice ramp up from May, June, July, and then we did have a dip in staffing in August, September, so you see less inspections completed. But that trend is fairly consistent year to year, where as fall sports start up, this season, summer season kind of winds down, so do the hours, so do the boat traffic. All right, page 7, we show a representative of the inspections that were completed by weekday. Our program is predominantly out there on weekends and holidays, so Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and then we had Memorial Day and Labor Day Monday, as well as the Tuesday of 4th of July this year. So, and then we'll sprinkle in a random Wednesday or Thursday as inspector availability is, and as part of the program that was outlined, I think there calls for 6 or so randomized weekdays to maybe catch some boaters that wouldn't normally be recreating on the weekends. The bar graph on this page, figure 9, is a representation of the time of day that the inspection took place. So every inspection is time stamped, and so the blue bar is representative of an inspection that took place from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. The orange bar, which is our most commonly inspected time frame, represents inspections from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the gray is our evening inspections, 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. I will say that we don't typically staff too much later than 5 p.m. It is something I would maybe consider assessing for 2024, instead of just doing predominantly day or morning inspector coverage, maybe mix in some evening coverage to see who's coming off the lake and exiting through the launch closer towards sunset. Page 8 is a display of what responses the inspectors, and they ask each boater what was the last body of water and what is the next body of water they're planning to visit. So each location is categorized in these two bar graphs by what is known infestations in them, and then the number of responses that we received from each of those lakes. So in the last body of water visited, most responses came from which is known to be infested with zebra mussels and Eurasian water milfoil. So you see 707 occurrences at Upper Pryor and 456 at Lower Pryor. Not surprisingly, being that Pryor Lake's such a busy location within the watershed district. A couple that we want to call out for the next body of water planning to visit, being that there are zebra mussels on Pryor Lake launches. You see green bars, Fish Lake or Cedar Lake in Scott County. Those are the ones where we take a little bit extra time to educate the boater, be extra thorough with the inspection process, say, hey, if you're leaving Upper Pryor Lake and you might be going to Fish Lake or Cedar Lake, those aren't known to be infested with anything. Let's encourage the dry time, the 5-day dry time, or an extra inspection, or even a decontamination if necessary. All right, page 9 is a representation of our inspection findings, violations, and decontaminations. We did not staff any decontamination unit in Pryor Lake, but when we encountered situations as visual inspectors, we would refer them to the DNR's list of contamination sites. We know that they were out there on Lower Pryor frequently, so that would be a common, let's get up there, let's go. And oftentimes I would provide the inspectors with the head that, hey, DNR is covering Lower Pryor today, so if you do have situations that require a legally required decontamination or even a recommended situation, we can refer them up there. There's also, a decontamination unit staff at Christmas Lake, which isn't all that close, but they can also take their watercraft to any place that they feel necessary. We can't force them to go somewhere to be decontaminated. So we did have 26 entering inspections that had some form of violation of Minnesota AIS laws. Basically, it says you can't transport any water plants or animals on your watercraft or water-related equipment. We had 12 watercrafts arrive at the accesses without their drain plugs in. In each of these situations, the inspectors were able to direct these boaters through fully resolving their issue before allowing a launch. And we found no zebra mussels on entering inspections this year, which was a good thing. I know we found at least one last year. So on exiting inspections, we had 306 exiting watercrafts that had at least some form of potential AIS violations on it. In those situations, our inspectors work with the boat owner to clean, dry before they leave the launch and make it become an official invasive AIS state statute violation. So the two pie charts on this page show the findings both on entering and exiting. So plants is our most common finding, especially on windy days or if the wind in towards the launches. Some of those trailers can come off pretty covered in vegetation. So, yes. Switching to page 10. This is just the same representation from the pie chart in the page before, but shows the entering violations by lake and exiting violations by lake. So you can see where we found most of those plants on Upper Prior Lake. And then exiting, same thing, 132 occurrences where we found plants on exiting watercraft. The occurrences where we found zebra mussels were on Lower Prior Lake and Spring. So happy to not see any coming off of Fish Lake. All right, and then the page 11 and 12 is something that we do extra or in addition to the state inspections. It's an additional survey that we have created that allows our inspectors to identify the types of plants being found, since it is the most common violation found during these inspections. It was something that we started at the board's request 3 years ago, and I've kind of evolved it through with the inspectors that when they have time, obviously if they're 4 or 5 boats trying to enter or exit the lake, we don't want them taking the time to slow down that inspection process to do this extra form. But assuming they have time, we have them take a picture and this extra form of what they're finding with these plants in an attempt to identify it. And I say attempt because they're not trained scientists, marine biologists. Oftentimes field identification of these plants can be difficult and inaccurate, but we do provide extra training for our inspectors, pictures within this form that say, does it look like this or does it look like this? And then we gather this information in a survey that we can present to you guys. And so here, of these hundreds of examples of plants, more often than not, this is what we're finding or that's what we're finding. So the chart there in the top left is what lake launch they were working at when they completed this additional plant identification form. On the upper right pie chart is just the entering or exiting, so 96% of were on exiting watercraft. And then the bottom pie chart is the plants that inspectors field identified as finding coming off of watercraft. So I'll just call yourself to the red part of the pie chart that was found 25% of the time, that identified as Eurasian water milfoil, which is an invasive species. And then the gray part of the pie chart, 7% of the time, our inspectors had field identified the plant as curly-leaf pondweed, another invasive species. So a couple examples for you on page 12 of what these photos look like. Top left is an example from Spring Lake on July 7th. An exiting watercraft. It was a PWC. You can see it's kind of sucked up, dangling from the propeller underneath the PWC. see. And the kind of looked like a mixture of things, but the inspector had suspected curly-leaf pondweed, EWM, and a flat stem pond kind of mixed together. That's one that I'd hope that the boat owner would notice and get all the way under their key and remove that. But even weeds caught up in an impeller can be hard to clear in those situations. So hopefully that was done before the next launch. In this case it was, but hopefully if there's an inspector not present, the boat owner would take that responsibility on themselves to either dry or remove those themselves. Top right is also at Spring Lake on the same day, actually, July 7th. Another exiting watercraft with suspected curly-leaf pondweed caught on the trailer bracket there, one of the common kind of hiding places where weeds will hit to other bodies of water if we're not careful. Bottom two pictures, the bottom left is from Upper Fire Lake on July 29th, an exiting inspection where the inspector suspected EWM, Eurasian water milfoil, caught on the axle rung in the center of a trailer. Again, one of those situations where hopefully the boat owner, if an inspector present, sees it, reaches under and grabs it, but it's also been observed plenty of times where it's too far under the watercraft to crawl or reach, and they don't make the effort to do so before transporting the watercraft, and therefore posing the spread of AIS risk. And then the bottom right is a exiting inspection from Lower Pryor on August 3rd, where the inspector found a steel fragment about a couple inches long, suspected EWM. I think it's potentially a native milfoil, but stuck just kind of with the water tension on the side of a trailer bunk. So you'd hope it would fly off in the road if it wasn't caught by the inspector or the boat owner. But again, an easy vector of transport if the boat owner isn't being diligent and responsible cleaning their watercraft before transporting it. So the next handful of pages are individual lake breakdowns. I will skip over that if you guys are okay with that, and then just go to page 29, where we cover some trends of the past seasons of data. So these numbers all encompass waterfront restorations data over the past 3 seasons, as well as the DNR's data. So you can see where Lower Pryor Lake is by far the busiest launch, and then the additional inspection survey the DNR completed on that lake. And then at the very bottom of this page, I put a year-over-year increase or decrease of boater traffic trends, basically the total number of inspections, and that's as true as the hours of inspector coverage. So keep that in mind. But the interesting thing we saw was the increase over the past years, and then in 2022 we saw a 26% decrease. 2020, COVID years where everyone was encouraged to be outdoors, as a safe, socially distant activity potentially, and then it bounced back this year with the 39% increase in inspections completed. So I thought that was a nice visual to show the 5-year trends of inspections. And then on page 30, the same 5-year trend over contracted inspector coverage hours. That's just the hours that the watershed district has hired us for. And then you can see our staffing on lakes is pretty consistent. We did do less hours on Lower Pryor Lake this year, solely based on the fact that the DNR was more frequently scheduled there, and we reallocated those hours to Upper Pryor, Spring Lake, in comparison to what we did in 22. The 2 bar graphs at the bottom of this page are a comparison of what the DNR inspectors do at these specific launches the last 5 years, and what our inspectors have done over the last 5 years. So, and just the Lower Pryor Lake launch and the Upper Pryor Lake launch, I don't believe that has done any inspections at Fish Lake or Spring Lake. So, Lower Pryor Lake this year, you can see they did just about 5,000 inspections compared to our 1,300. Again, when they're staffed there, them take priority of the lake, and we'll move our inspectors to a different launch. And
Can I ask a
then,
question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I just looked at your prior inspection, DNR versus contract. Quite a bit of difference between 2022 and 2023. Is that because you guys are coordinating inspections better, or that's why there's a lesser amount on DNR on upper prior, but then there's a higher amount on lower prior?
yep, exactly. So I remember last year, 2022 season, the DNR inspectors did some on upper prior and lower prior, and this year it was almost entirely, if they were out there, they were on lower prior, and partly because they would bring their decontamination with, and it's a bigger parking lot, a lot more traffic, a lot more opportunity to use the decon unit on the lower prior launch.
But that's part of your coordination that you said you,
Exactly. Yep.
okay.
Yep. If the DNR wasn't staffed on lower prior, we'd move our inspector there as a priority.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, and they did maybe one shift on upper prior this year, which is represented there in the 40 inspections that they did on upper compared to our 1,512. So, yep, that's part of the coordination there.
Mm-hmm.
The two bar graphs on page 31 break down the inspections by month. They break it down by week, and the just call outs here is the significant increase of traffic touches in July, as well as May. I think that was a big increase over the last year for sure. Similar levels to 2021, probably mostly weather related. And then even into September, you can see we had a big increase in September inspections compared to all the prior years. We had some really good fall weather, unseasonably warm. We had some additional inspection hours available. So I our inspectors out there on Saturdays and Sundays into September, and a couple of the first Saturdays and Sundays in October. So that is represented in the data. And then the last couple pages here for you. One of the interesting facts of the outcome and the results this year is we did, our inspectors and the DNR inspectors have a significant increase in entrance violations for AIS laws. We went from a 0.68, 0.62 over the 2 years prior to a 1.63% ratio in 2023. And we saw a similar trend for drain plug violations, actually, where it went from a 0.12% last year up to a 1.32% this year. So I don't have a great explanation for you other than that I think a lot of them came from Lower Prior Lake, and for whatever reason, were not as clean to enter the lakes. So I guess it shows value in the services provided to make sure that those boat owners are maintaining responsibility of a watercraft before entering. And then the bar graph on the bottom of this page is our comparison of findings at entrance by year. So say 5-year trend in the data where we look at what's been found each of the past 5 years by plants, water, zeros, mud, and drain plug violations. So that's kind of the head scratcher for me. We went from 8 drain plugs being in last year to 118 this year. So yeah, and then, the other ones such as zebra mussels, mud, water have been fairly consistent over the years. So all right, and then the first bar graph on page 33 is the same comparison over 5 years of AIS type by type or species at exit. And then the good thing here, all the categories were fairly consistent over the past 5 years of data. We did see a reduction in the number of zebra mussels found exiting on watercraft. Far right category there, we went from 77 last year down to 39 this year. So I would consider that positive. And then the last bar graph here to show is the comparison of DNR's decontaminations over the past 5 years. So they did have a decrease in decontaminations this year, down from 47 last year to 32 this year. I've heard and seen that same trend and a decrease in decontaminations in other locations throughout the state. So I don't know why. It is a bit of a sensitive or tricky situation between identifying a legally required decontamination and being able to strongly encourage and recommend a decontamination that the boat owner chooses to adhere to. The last pie chart on page 34 is the breakdown of decontaminations completed by the DNR inspectors in the watershed district in 2023. So 62% of them were on exiting watercraft, 22 on entering, and 16% on of them were current. So the boat actually didn't launch into the lake. They did it as they were moving to another body of water, not within the watershed district. So, all right, and then to summarize, total our inspectors conducted 33.8 inspections per hour of staffing. It was a 39% increase in total inspections across the watershed district in 2023 compared to 2022. We did get reports that most boaters were aware of their responsibility to prevent the spread of AS, especially later in the boating season as they became familiar with the presence of inspectors and the process of inspecting. And we really want to make that educational effort to say, here's how you self-inspect your watercraft so that when we're not here, you can still do this yourself thoroughly and completely. I do think that the additional plant identification survey returned valuable insight and some pictures to give you visuals into what's being found and where at the watershed district launches. A couple opportunities I would say for upcoming seasons is continue the partnership with our level 2 inspectors and work with them to increase the number of decontaminations. I think the AAS law compliance and drain plug compliance worsening overall could be addressed with some additional educational messaging or social media PR campaigns. And then we did have some staffing shortages in August and September with some of our inspectors returning back to school or fall sports. We had some flexibility within the parameters of the scheduling guidelines that all worked out well with the really warm fall weather. But then I would also continue to consider more funding for hours. Even on weekdays, Lower Prior Lake would be a great location to catch some boating traffic. So overall, I would consider the season a success. Thank you for trusting Waterfront Restoration to hire and staff and train professional and inspectors at your 4 lake launches and preventing the spread of invasive species. And happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you for a lot of graphs and figures.
It's a lot of information.
I have a hard time sleeping. I know what I'm going to be reading. Kristen, you have a question?
Yes, please. I have two questions. One is, what is the plan for 2024, given the fact that we will be doing work at the Sand Creek launch site on Lower Prior Lake? In terms of, there's probably going to be less inspections there, and potentially there could be more inspections on more traffic at the other 2 locations. So that's question number one. The second question is, you said there's about 9% wake boat entering or leaving the lakes, and that's relatively high compared to many comparing lakes. And my question is, how do you work with a boat when they come or leave? You ask them, because, and the reason why I'm asking is because ballast tanks that they fill, and when you look at research studies, they show if they don't empty those completely and work with them, when they go from lake 1 to 2 to 3, they basically maintain all the zebra mussels or whatever it may be. It's hard to know how do you effectively deal with it.
Yep. So your first question about the construction of Sand Creek launch, I'm not aware of it, but happy to work with the board and staff however need to switch scheduling and inspector coverage around, because you're right, if that launch is closed, it will push boaters to other launches within the watershed. So I think it's the great aspects of our program is we can be flexible with our staff and our people. And the main goal there that we're all united by is providing the best value for the watershed district and the protection of the environment. So happy to collaborate on that however we need to for the 2024 season. And then my main reason for calling out the 9% of inspected watercraft as wake sport boats with ballast tanks is because they are more difficult to guarantee that they are dried. And some of the other locations are more predominantly fishing boats. We see maybe a 1 or 2% ratio of inspected craft as wake sport boats. But from an inspector standpoint in those situations, those wake sport boats are very expensive, can be intimidating. The technical and intricacies of the mechanics of it can be complicated, and so it's always a challenge at times for the inspector to maintain a level of patience and communication with the boat owner to say, let's make sure that this is completely drained. Can you run your bilge pumps, all of them? And if we can't guarantee the water's out of it visually, let's open up your ballast tank covers. And that's where it gets a little tricky as well. If they have hard ballast tanks, you can't lift them up and make sure they're dry. If they have the soft ballast tanks, they can lift them up and make sure that low point is the drainage point in the bilge tube. But it does take a collaboration with the boat owner itself to make sure that, yes, this boat is drained and will be dry before launch again. The other part of it, this maybe gets into some more of the technical parts of wake sport boats, but I know older models had more of a problem with this, and I believe the newer manufactured wake sport boats actually developed a better ballast tank where the drain point of the ballast tank is at the lowest possible point of gravity within that tank, so that drain is happening. So and we can't guarantee that the ballast tanks are completely dry. That's when our inspectors will say, hey, there's a unit staffed at the lower prior launch by the DNR, or we can go through this quick website that the DNR provides to see all the states' ballast or decontamination locations, or bring it to the marina you bought it at. They'll clean it for you too.
And a quick extra question there. So could you possibly give us a recommendation on how to advise owners of wake boats in terms of when they exit and enter a lake, and what typically would be advised to do that we could share with our lake associations? Because I know they work closely with people that live on the lake, but also people that come in and off the lake, and probably would, and I know they would like to work with as well in terms of pamphlets, also not just about how to enter the lake and leave the lake, but also in terms of how do you best use the lake so that you cause the problems on the lake.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I know the DNR, as part of the training everyone goes through every year, includes wake sport boat training. And we have some additional internal training that we do just to build upon the foundation set by the DNR, but I'd be happy to get those resources gathered and share with Jeff for distribution. Yeah. It's becoming more and more popular, more and more of a problem at times too. So, I think the effort there to educate the boater and the public on how to properly clean them and drain them and then also operate them is critical. I've also know that a lot of the marine marinas that sell them do additional training, are starting to do more additional training on how to do that part of the AIS and the draining of the ballast tanks as they sell them to people too. The industry's catching up, but it needs to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Manager Boyles.
Are there any penalties whatsoever for any of the violations here that you could administer for your inspectors? Or is it simply know that you're not doing the right thing here?
Yeah, so the inspectors themselves can't administer any penalties in the event that we do have a watercraft arrive with or exit without a major violation, I would say. So if
Which would be
uh,
an example.
a major violation, I would consider someone arriving at a launch with zebra mussel attached to it or on the watercraft. Or another example would be by state statute, if a watercraft inspector is staffed at the launch, that boat owner has to comply with at least a visual inspection. They don't have to answer the questions. They don't have to be super friendly. They just have to allow their watercraft to be visually inspected. We've had, not this year in the watershed district, but other occasions and other years where people have said, I don't have time, I'm just launching, or I don't have time for an exit inspection, I'm just leaving. And in those situations, we'll record their license plate and report it to the local conservation officer or the sheriff's department for follow-up.
They can take action.
Yep. So we had two occurrences of this in a different county this year where arrived at a launch with a zebra mussel attached to their watercraft, major violation because it could be a new introduction to a clean body of water. We denied the launch, sent them to decontaminate, reported the violation to the sheriff's water patrol, visited them at the house and knocked on their door and wrote them a citation. So it does happen, not as frequently as maybe it should, but I know the sheriff's departments and water patrols, conservation officers throughout the state are probably doing their best they can with the resources they have available, but it citation in those situations.
Gotcha. Thank you. My favorite line here is that some people just declined on telling you when the last time the boat was used.
Yeah.
Gee whiz, does that tell you something?
Yeah. You know, the 90% of people are wonderful and appreciative of the services, thank us for being out there and helping protect the environment and raise awareness. There's maybe that 3 or 4% grumpy, impatient, and legally they have to wait up to 15 minutes for an inspection. If it's longer than that, they can proceed or leave or launch. But they also are not required to answer any of the questions that the inspectors are asking as part of the survey process. So, yeah.
Sure. Inspection for you guys, how long? 10 minutes, 15, half an hour?
If it's a clean boat, 3 to 5 minutes. Yeah. The bigger boats get a little more involved, especially some of the nice fishing boats that have the live wells, or the wake sport boats that have the ballast tanks. Those can be a little bit longer, but
Sure.
3 to 5 minutes on average.
Thank you.
Yes, board member.
Yes, so we have discussed the possibility of setting up these decontamination sites, at the launches, and more with the lake associations. How much does that cost? Is that feasible?
Let's see. There's a couple different models. I know you do one that's on a trailer, like a decontamination unit. I think those run anywhere from like $16,000 to $20,000 to buy new. And then we staff 4 decontamination units at other locations throughout the state. So it's just a matter of providing staffing and training. The training part is fairly simple. This is what you'd want to work on almost, I don't want to say a guarantee, but the more people that know about it and can trust that it's going to be there when they need it, are willing to travel to that location to have that decontamination completed, or you just put it on your busiest launch, Lower Prior Lake, and it's always there and available to the public. But staffing it becomes a problem because you can't on available for anyone in the public just to come grab a high pressure hose and heated water to use on their own. It has to be part of a trained and authorized inspector to operate it. But if you Derek is here with me tonight. He's our account manager and can help us more further breakdown of pricing that would look like for you guys.
Thank you.
Questions from anybody? I know you gave us a series of recommendations there. I think we've already passed our budget for 2024.
Okay.
I don't know, whatever that is. That's the coverage you're going to get. The other lakes, consider coverage for other lakes. I don't know if there is another lake want coverage. I don't believe there would be. So, I mean, other lakes we have, non-fishing lakes. And continue to provide and refresh education, AS material. I think that's a good idea. This whole thing has usually been about education and
Yep.
keeping people informed, so.
And if you guys have brochures or information, postcards that you want to get into the hands of boaters, I'd be happy to hand them out at the launches.
I think we can look into that, or maybe we do have them already, I don't know. Yep, it's a good idea, though.
Happy to help the Watershed District however we can in that effort.
Okay, well, thank you for, I mean, there's a lot of information that you went through.
There is,
And
there
It's
is.
pretty interesting, you know, the different things that you bring in your charts and everything, so appreciate it. Does anybody else? Any other questions? Appreciate your annual report.
You're very welcome. Yeah, if there's questions as you digest more of the data or charts, feel free to reach out and we'll get what you need from a data standpoint or further explanation. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to cost share project approval. This is item 4.5. There's a motion to approve a variance, NTE $10,000 for Island View Shoreland Restoration Cost Share.
I'll take that one
Okay,
first. You should
Emily?
see on your screen here shortly. There we go. We recently had a resident reach out to us. He is a homeowner in a homeowners association, HOA. That HOA serves 80 people in the neighborhood, and they call them additions that he's in. There's more than 100 in other additions or kind of the development. And he was interested in seeing if they could look at a shoreline restoration project on their HOA line area. So we looked at doing that with Soil and Water Conservation District. Soil and Water proposed a project, and the landlord was really said, yeah, this is great. We'd be willing to do more if you could fund more. And that was a really rare response to this type of project. Typically, the soil and water staff member who works with these projects has a hard time convincing people to do the minimum shoreline requirement to get cost share. Also, Upper Prior Lake is heavily armored, so the opportunities to do this are limited. This property is an HOA, so it would be seen by 80 households, whereas the typical cost share doc is mostly based around landowners. So we felt it was worth considering to do an extended cost share for this project. You can see in the map on the right that yellow area is what would be typically covered under our cost share docket. Green area is what is proposed as the extended. It would offer additional water quality benefits, as well as just a much bigger footprint and impact. The benefits of this site also being large and owned by 80 people is that there's visibility. So we can get a lot of people to see what our cost share is about and a sample project. So we are looking at the cost share maximum is $2,000. To this green area, it would be a maximum of $10,000. So that would be what we would be asking to approve for board approval. With that being said, it would be a maximum request. We anticipate seeking grant funding. We think it would be highly competitive for lawns to legumes and other such programs. So it's unlikely, I think, that the Watershed District would cover 10,000. This we're motivated to because this fits within our cost share budget that exists. This is an additional funding, but we want to do more projects with that funding. So aiming to keep that as low as possible, but want to be able to go forward to the HOA and say, we're willing to do this if you are. So that's the proposal on the table. The HOA, another note too, is voluntary, so they aren't automatically getting dues from everyone in this neighborhood. But I'm happy to answer any questions beyond.
Manager Boyles.
I'm a tenderfoot. Tell me what exactly what are you doing? What is the shoreline that is being treated?
Yep. Yeah, so essentially we plant a buffer of native plants. So their root structures are much deeper. It's gonna solidify the bank there. So it's less oxygen, more filtration for runoff. That you can see the land kind of above it. In the rest of the parcel, it's lawn. It's fertilized in water. So having more next to the lake means that runoff is less of it's gonna get to the lake.
And that's the two areas that you show that look like concrete there, for lack of a better term. Is that right?
The area where we'd propose to do the project is the green area. The is the cost share. Did I get your question right?
Show me the green area.
Oh,
He's talking about- This is the area that would be done under our $2,000 max.
To here or
Yeah.
this way to there?
Yep, and then this other.
Helps.
oh, I guess I have a
This is
pointer
the
on my
extra
thing
area.
too.
$10,000.
And so.
Sorry, I'm color biased.
I'm in a homeowners association as well. And we charge our members. So what if I come to you and say, well, we charge our members, but I don't want to pay any freight here. I want to have the same deal. Would that be okay? If we had the money? Big if, I guess.
Yes, I think it would be the district's best interest, and we would be very open to other homeowners associations doing this type of work because it's so limited and rare that people are willing to do a natural shoreline on Upper Prior Lake. It's very highly armored. There's actually another wing of this homeowners association that we as staff said, oh, I wish they would be willing to do lake shore restoration because it's very steep banks and would be a good project for us.
Thank you.
Christian, you have a question?
Yes, I am certainly in favor of it. I think it's a very good idea. It has so many benefits, and it's an example. If you can help them in grasses and flowers and a lot of different flowers so that they aesthetically can see it and vary them through the seasons, they have spring, summer, and fall experience with it, and sort of explain to them that we are looking at a 3 to 4 year time frame to really see the benefit. I think it would be a good thing. And these are, one question I have is when you do this, two questions is when you do this, what is the time frame that it has to be there, remain there? And number two, how do we inspect it? Because typically if it's lawn legumes, it's SWCD that inspects it and will inspect it to make sure it's maintained. So they have to understand they have an obligation to maintain it. And I think we should definitely try to get the lawn to legume grant, other grants involved in it, so we decrease the amount of money that we have to spend on it, but use the programs that are specifically designed for this purpose.
Exactly. To answer on some of those, it's a 5-year minimum term. Megan is the specialist who works on these programs, and she's been really good about indicating that it takes several years to see the full growth. The cost estimates for these projects were designed with plugs, live plants on the border, just to have a more manicured approach, because one of the primary benefits of the district funding the extra project is that we want this to be visible to people, and we want people to like what they see. So you'll see in the recommendation for motion, staff recommendation for the motion is to include signage so that people understand in that year one, beyond that nice, beautiful edge, when it looks a little weedy, that's native plants establishing, and it's expected to look that way for year 1, year 2, year 3 is when you're going to see the growth. So that's definitely been a part of the plan, and Soil and Water does budget and anticipate monitoring with regular cost share projects, and that would be what they would do with to Lagoon. So that's part of the plan.
It seems a short time with only a 5-year frame on it. Yet it seems to me that if we're going to spend $10,000, 5 years is not a time frame, I would say. I think it should be longer.
But what do we do? They don't have any money, right? This homeowners association has no money. So it's last 7 years. It's supposed to be 10. What do we do? Get stuff in the water.
Well, this.
I mean, there's no enforcement, right? Or I totally misunderstand
Yep,
it.
so there is room to adjust that because in itself, this motion would be adjusting normal cost share, would be 5 years and a $2,000 maximum. So you could make a motion that we would approve a higher cost share and also a longer term that they would be agreeing to. That would just be in their agreement. I think that's a very fair request. The only downside to doing that would be potentially they could say, well, this is a new project type for us. We're not interested in that much longer, but I think the fallback for us as the district, as long as we're willing to have that as fallback, we can use that smaller footprint, the typical cost share terms if they're unwilling to go up to 10 years, let's say, would, I think, a fair request for $10,000.
I think it's important for them to understand that there's some maintenance associated with it. It's easy to do, it's not that complicated, but it is required. And I think they need to understand that up front. And they have to be motivated to do it. It really has to come from them, and it sounds very positive. So I think there's a good chance that there's people there that really do care about it. And you know, the thing you can also talk about is the pollinator benefit, which makes a big difference with the bumblebees and butterflies that are a big part of this experience.
I have several questions. First of all, this looks like a precedent.
Yep.
That we don't have. I mean, we have something. Has there been a shoreline restoration done with a homeowner and over the max?
I'm aware of with an individual homeowner.
But anybody else would come in, we would say, okay, our max is $2,000.
Yep.
Oh, but I'd like to go more.
There is.
Are we on the hook to say, yeah, I guess we've done that, we'll pay more? And who is putting this in? Is it a contractor or the homeowners association doing the work, or who's doing what?
There are elements that would be better suited to a contractor, but the idea would be to keep costs as low as possible, so to have the home in as much possible.
Or are we buying the plants? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, buying the plants,
Yeah.
seed blanket, erosion control, things like that.
The only problem I have is it seems like there should be some skin in the game.
Yep.
They want to do more. We can participate more. I mean, it seems like there should be some costs we want to pay, us paying 100%. Otherwise, I don't know, unless we want to change our docket policy.
Well, what have we got? 9 to 12 homeowners associations in the various
Yeah, there's
lakes?
quite a few.
And wouldn't we want to encourage them to do the same thing?
And I think in general, when you work with Lawrence to Lagoon, you sign a contract where you commit to treating the area that you're going to. You basically have to do the work to prepare the land. You have to apply certain things to it. Then you have to plant the plants. Then you have to maintain them. And in that stated in your document, that is part of the requirement for this. And it states
Exactly.
the SWCD will come and inspect it every year to see how is it going. So that's part of the requirement, as far as I understand.
That's exactly correct in this case.
And what happens if they don't do it?
Yes.
Then they would pay back
They'd have to pay back? That'd be an agreement?
that's the terms of a standard or cost share agreement. Yep.
Going to happen. Sorry. Are there other communities who have this up and running that we might be able to steal their template and play with?
Okay.
Well, suggesting that maybe we have some sort of contract with these folks, something that can be enforceable. Maybe you've got that already.
Yep, we have
Oh.
that as a, yep, at any cost share project, they sign a contract. And so just the only different thing is that we would be increasing our maximum contribution, potentially increasing our term requirements if that was of interest. There is a very interested and committed landowner who lives right next to this property. He just sworn in as a CAC member. So I'd say there's very people.
We'll have it inspected.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There has been discussions with Soil and Water about whether we want to increase our limits in general because we don't want to we want as many of these projects as possible. So that has been part of the discussion for other homeowners associations that might be interested, landowners who might have more land than that. We have been getting too few applications so far, so.
What if we took it step at a time? What if we did 2,000, not the 10, right out of the gate, to assure that some of these things are happening, right? Like they plant the stuff, it's the right stuff, the right place, they're maintaining it, they're weeding what they need to do. And then the second year we go, hey, they're still doing the thing, let's open it up for another $1,000 worth.
I
Just
think
a
our
thought.
cost efficiencies would be much higher to do it piecemeal like that.
I think you might get people losing interest too over the years.
That's what I
if they're
want to
only.
find out, really.
Well, no, but fair.
So another comment on that fear of maintenance, when I was talking with Megan, who designs these projects, I said, they're willing to do that whole property. That's our dream. And she said, well, there's a lot of things we could do, but this type of project is what I would recommend because it's low maintenance, mowing twice a year and some weeding, and it's something that you can do and be pretty certain the benefits are going to continue. With what might happen in transition of homeownership, things like that. Definitely default to the yellow area. That's what will happen. They don't have funds to contribute, so if we do not to increase our contribution, that's what's standard in our cost share docket.
You know, we're going to be looking at this docket here probably next month. Is this something we should actually change in our docket?
We could change.
It doesn't sound like it's,
We could change it in our docket.
and when we look at this, okay, this is what they think they would like to do. If we went, and I don't know what the dimensions are, is that 40 feet wide or by whatever length?
Yep, 40 by 165.
What if we went 25? Our normal buffer is 25. I'm just saying, it seems like that's, to me, and I look at that seems a pretty aggressive project. I know Christian's the expert on all these plantings he's done. He knows how much you probably have to do. The only problem I have is like a precedent, and is this going to bite down the road with other associations, or if we're willing to do this, it's a good thing, then we say yes,
Well,
we're
and
going to do this.
part of whether it's a precedent or not, what is our total cost share budget for a year? What is it?
Yeah,
for
it's
this year?
27,000. So we were
This
going
uses
to, this would
About
be,
a third.
yes. However, like I said, we're really looking to
Yeah.
spend as little as possible. The status quo would be us contributing $2,000. So that's kind of the minimum. It's a flat rate.
One thing it was, if I was in charge of it, which I'm not, but if I was, I probably would want to meet with the people that are responsible for this and educate them on what this is. Show them pictures, like you could use the Virgil Avenue example, where you can show them year 1, year 2, year 3, and show them the things there, but also pick what's actually required. And understand is, what is commitment? Do they understand what they are committing to? Are they willing to do that?
As part of the cost share process, we'd be presenting to their HOA, walking through those requirements of the agreement. So they would understand their maintenance with pictures and all of that. So, yeah.
Overall, it would set a very good precedent on the lake. I mean, this is exactly what I would recommend.
And in response to the skinnier buffer. We were to knock it down to 25 from 40, we wouldn't really see very much cost savings. Because the majority of the cost is coming from the linear footage, to get that nice edge with plugs, the deeper buffer is really not what contributes the cost there.
I'd go for 2.
Okay, I don't know where we're going with this, but my one thought is, okay, we would pay up to 2,000. And whatever extra you want to do, we'll pay 50%. That would be something that, then we get skin in the game, and we've set a policy. If anybody else wants to come and do this, this is what we do. And we'll find out how much, and we could actually say we'll up to, what would that be? What would that be? $6,000. And you're up, and you do the rest up to 10,000, that's up to, we're paying up to 50% more, 2,000. Without the market being changed, I mean, I don't know. That's just my suggestion. If I don't know if it would be a motion, but it seems, I'm uncomfortable with just, there's a lot of associations in public, and if we give them the same deal, if this is what we want to do. So I'm just looking at precedent. It's not even on the total dollar amount. We are setting a policy here tonight.
How often have we used up our cost share budget in previous years?
We typically spend the cost share budget. This year's been low because we have had so much outside funding, so we didn't expend the majority of it. We had state funds to help us.
So cost share would be for other things as well?
Correct.
Besides this?
Yeah.
What is most typically the biggest cost share portion, do you know?
Oh, that's a hard question, Frank.
Thought it'd be easy.
No, there's a lot of different project types, so it probably changes year to year based on what the other thing to note here is, again, this is maximum request, and it's not saying that we will. Cost share projects are always prioritized based on what we have funding and what projects there are on the table. So we could internally say, other projects that are competing, this isn't a high priority. I do just want to reiterate that they have expressed they don't have money to contribute. So if we want to propose that we would split 50, they'll stick with what the yellow, the smaller cement area is, because it's free to them, and they can do something, and they'll say, that's great, we want to do what we can, but we don't have money to
So
contribute.
they do the 2,000.
That's what they're doing.
So typically, there is always a portion that you pay as a homeowner yourself. So
In some cost
when
shares.
you weren't with lawns and legumes, you will pay 25% of the project yourself, and you put in all the work.
Can't call this.
So I think it's reasonable that we come back to them and try and educate them a little bit more and say, you can understand is that there is a requirement for you to give at the very least a good effort. And I would agree with Manager Loney's approach too. And I would also say, if I could ask, I would ask for a 10-year requirement at least. If you go up to that high amount. But I think it's a very good project. I'm very much in support of it. They just need to understand is, I just worry about if they just get it and they are not invested in it, that they won't take care of it. Because it's not just planting, you have to take care of it.
Yep.
Otherwise it won't survive.
Is there a time crisis for this? I mean, if we put it on the next workshop, we can chat about it a little more.
They have semi-infrequent that they have one in February, so the idea would be if we approve today, then we can say our board is willing to put forward X amount. If that's possible, then we can present the benefits and say the standard cost share is $2,000, this is the area. So that's the only time crunch. Cost share dollars get spent as the year goes on, so if it's a priority, I would advise to make that priority early.
Well, I'd go for the $2,000.
A
Well-
motion? Is that a motion, Frank?
Just a minute, if the,
That's
so, so the cost share money, though, if it's used up, then in the future, even if this is a precedent, if the money's used up for that year, then the answer is always no.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's always a stopgap on any precedent that might be set. And by doing a big project like this, wouldn't that demonstrate to other groups that, yeah, maybe we can only do one a year, but we are willing to help, and isn't this what we want to encourage? And I guess I'm kind of in favor. And if we table it, then I think that, I don't know, it might lose any interest. I don't know.
They've got that little interest, I question. If this were 5 and 5, we'll go 5, you go 5, that's what the term cost share is.
Yeah, and,
as I recall.
yeah, cost share, if they're not paying anything, it's not much of a cost share.
I can speak on that. So some of our cost share is a flat rate. So this is one of those cases. It's $2 per square foot, a maximum of $2,000. This happens to be a very cost-effective land, so the cost of the project of their minimum footage is below that $2,000. So that's the way that their square footage worked out.
I'm in favor of the project, but probably some skin in the game, like Manager Loney was mentioning. I think it's important they understand it's not a gift. It's a gift with an and a
I could actually justify going more based on, that looks like a bigger parcel than, it looks like it could have 2 homes or maybe 2.5. So if our docket was
I see what
intentionate for a house.
Using that rationale.
Yeah, using that rationale, let's say you could get homes on there. I would propose that we could go up to $6,000. And however they want to spend that, it looks like they could go all the way, then probably, 15 to 20 feet deep or whatever it is, but that would be my justification. Then we're staying in the context or the, what we have docket, a maximum contribution of 2,000. Saying that we have probably 3 lots there. So if anybody else wants to,
I feel more comfortable not
Yeah.
calling it a variance.
we're not changing
It
the,
at least has the same base.
doing some
Doesn't mean I'm
rationalization.
going to vote for it.
Well, should I make a motion? Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
Can I?
Yes, you have the same powers as anyone else.
I can't make a motion, I don't think, as the chair.
Yeah.
I think it's better if other people do.
If other
I'll-
managers.
I can do it. I can make the motion to approve for not to exceed 6,000 with 10-year maximum. Everything else as recommended. Does that cover?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does that? I think you should, the motion would be to approve $10,000 for the Iron View Shoreline Restoration cost share, provided that education signage is included along the project.
Yes, yeah, that was already
written.
That was already in there, so as recommended, so yes, so moved.
That's your motion, and is there?
Did he say 6,000? You said 10,000?
No,
I said 6,000.
Yes,
I said the motion in here,
Yeah,
did
he
I say
was-
10,000?
yes, you did.
Yeah, because
Not what
the recommendation was 10,000, so I'm saying 6,000,
I meant.
as long as the signage is included with a 10-year term.
Okay,
Leave that
I believe I
covers it.
got that.
And all responsibilities accomplished.
Yes.
in a time.
Yeah, with
Okay.
normal.
Good luck.
I think that motion, is there a second? Second by Master Morkenberg. Okay. Do you want to have any more discussion on this? Are you ready to vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nate,
Oh, motion carried 3-1.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, whew. Let me go
Hey,
back,
there's-
let me see where we're at here.
Different ideas and things.
That's good, though. That was definitely thinking out of the box there.
Yes. Good
Okay.
thinking.
Okay, we're going to go to the treasurer's report now. Manager Morkenborg.
Thank you. Yes, it's a good treasurer's report, sort of reviewing 2023, and overall, the district activity within the 2023 budget. There was a few select items that went over budget, and those were areas such as engineering, where we did a lot of extra work for our management studies, so we spent more money on that, but still very much within the budget. Also, we worked more with Soil and Water Conservation District and in areas that are new and innovative and very helpful. And so that also cost more money, but again, that was agreed to before we did it, and think very good. So the district cash flow is adequate to cover the district operations, and the district has committed funds available to help fund select upper watershed district and alum projects when the need arises, and or if landowner agreement is secured. The last page of the report, which is called the cost analysis year-to-date 12/21/23, you can see that the sort of the big expenditures for consultants is EOR, which is our main engineering service, and Soil and Water Conservation District. So that's in line with what we discussed. When we look at the balance sheet, it's important that the total assets match our total liabilities and balance, and they do. So with that, that's the end of my report. Any questions?
I have just one question, and I talked to Christian about this earlier, but we did the transfers of the alum and the debt service and the upper watershed. Should that be reflected at the end of the year? I mean, our 2023, January 1 to December 31. I'm just thinking, look at how should that be reflected in our, because I'm trying to look at what is our net fund balance, but yet the alum and the debt service, shouldn't that be transferred out of their budget then? Joni, I guess that's the question.
Manager Loney, you're right, they do still show up on the manager's report as being part of the 2023 budget, but they also, with the December recommitment, they do show up in the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
For those full amounts. We can have future discussions with the accountant to see if there's a way of reflecting that at year end.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to put the two together. And that's why I was getting a little confused. It's in the treasurer's report, not in this, whatever we call this one, the main budget.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's in there, but I know it's not. Okay. So that was my only question.
It shows up as a budgeted item, but does not really show up as an expenditure because it's really a commitment for future reserve. But once again, we can talk to our district to figure out if there's a better way of reflecting that.
Yeah. So the commitments we have are up to date as of December 31st, and those were moved. So
Yes.
that's correct. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And similarly, at the end of the year, we have commitments that, if still decided, will be in there.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, that gives us a good idea of money we have for alum, upper watershed, and those things. So, okay. This isn't the time that you give a quarterly report, is it, Joni? You're not giving a.
My quarterly report on investment will be next month.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now we're going to the consent agenda, and I know one item has to be pulled, item 6.14, because there's 3 items in there for approval. Get the one scope of work agreement for the payroll. So,
Documents missing.
document missing.
I'll move the consent agenda with the exception of items 6.4.
1.4.
Nope, 6.4 and
Oh.
6.14,
Oh, 6.4. Oh,
please.
all right, 4 and 6.14 have been removed from the consent agenda.
So you got a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Manager Burnett. We can't discuss the consent. All in favor of the consent agenda? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried 4-0. It's now we're going to go to 6.4, and this is on permit fee schedule, and
Yes.
Mr. Manager Boyles.
So the question, what did our levy go up, 2.1 something, or was it 1 point?
1.5.
0.5 manager.
So my question is, why doesn't our permit fee go up the same amount? Because eventually it'll get it, these are permit fees, right? Theoretically, our costs of doing business have gone up 1 point whatever. Unless that's not true, at least maybe the funding source is elsewhere. So I'm just wondering, rather than having the permit fees the same, 23 to 24, should we have them go up 1.5, whatever it was?
Manager Boyles, that is a very good point. Costs do go up. You know, you can just consider inflation as well. With that, the reality, you know, with the equivalencies that we have with our partners, honestly, it's fair for us to actually assess these charges, given the relationships that we have with some of our partners. But that still does not negate the point that when these opportunities occur, I wouldn't say opportunities, but when these situations occur, you know, our costs are going up. So if you would like to table this for this time period, we can come back next month with some better assessment of possibly increasing some of these costs.
So other partners would be other cities?
Correct.
Would the idea be, we're thinking about raising our fees 1.5. What do you guys think? Is that the discussion you'd have?
I mean, I certainly can research what some of the other, agencies are doing and what their cost increase are that they're putting through.
Sure.
But like once again, because a lot of the private development is being reviewed by our development partners, that we have foregone our permitting authority to minimize duplication. You know, we've reduced some of our permitting authority and have agreements with our agencies to enforce our rules through their permitting process.
I see, which may or may not have any kind of increase built into them. Right? Okay. All right, that answers my question.
Just have one other question then. Our fees that we have, we are recouping our cost, whether we, you know,
It's a better question.
yeah, I mean, we're not subsidizing the permit. We're recouping our cost.
Right now, as we are trying to get our system into place, we are basically subsidizing at this point.
That's a
And
better question.
we further refine until, this is probably a larger discussion. You know, right now we are providing review comments to ensure that that our district's permits and rules are enforced until we feel comfortable that our partners are fully enforcing our rules.
So I think by budgeting for 25, by that time, you may have had worked that sort of thing out. So in other words, we'll adopt them as is right now with the understanding that next budget will have a revenue stream.
Manager
consider
Boyles, yes, absolutely. I think we'll have better refined processes in place next year to fully understand what our costs that we are incurring.
You comfortable with that as staff? Okay.
Okay.
You can deal with both consent items at the same time
Can I?
if you want. Yeah.
Well, somebody has
Well,
to.
at least that's my rules.
Okay, why don't you make a motion on 6.4 first?
So moved, right?
You said-
I did.
You're moving the 2024 permit, okay?
I'll second.
Second by Manager Burnett.
So we would keep it as is.
Keep it-
right now.
Yep.
With the understanding that the staff will take the opportunity to go through those and try and better reflect our actual costs in the fees.
And
Acceptable?
we'll get to approve the 2025 fee
Yep.
schedule, which you have that update. Yep. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. We are approving the 2025 fee schedule. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so now we're going to go to 6.14, which is the CLA Master Service Agreement and Scope of Works Agreement. And I believe we did not get the item C attachment for the payroll statement of work. So that should be removed for approval. And just to make a point here, I believe the preparation statement of work does refer to that statement of work for payroll in there. And I only sent out an email that she could actually approve the other statement of work once she gets that. So what I'm looking for is approval of the CLA Master Service and approval of the CLA Outsourcing Preparation Statement of Work. I can't make a motion.
So
you know.
moved, yes, you can, I swear.
I don't know. Jody said that. Can I?
Okay, well, maybe I have read
yeah.
103B and D like I should have.
Must be, I think.
Oh, AB's.
Okay, motion made by Manager. Anybody seconded?
And
Seconded by Manager Morkenberg. I'll give it to you. Okay. Other questions on the agreements?
yes, I have.
You got a question, Manager Morkenberg?
Yes, so I would just encourage all the board members to read the report that's in here, which is what we are voting on, which I'm sure you have. And just to understand it, the services they provide, which are very important. And I also want to compliment Administrator Giese for the amazing effort that you're doing with your particular skill of overseeing our finances. And as the treasurer, I really want to thank you for doing that. And it means very much to all of us to know that the money are spent correctly and that data are correct. So thank you.
Thank you, Manager Morkenberg.
Yep.
Yep. I agree. That's one of the skill sets that she has.
Very unique and very good. Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't think we're voting.
we haven't voted yet, have we? Okay, motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Very good. So now we are at Manager Boyles. I think your time to read the upcoming meeting and event schedule.
This is the thing that most watchers are waiting for right now. Our CAC meeting is Thursday, January 25th, 2024, 6 p.m. Here at Prior Lake City Hall in the Wagon Bridge Conference Room. It's downstairs. The Board of Managers retreat will be Saturday, January 27th, 2024, commencing at 9 a.m. and I think concluding approximately noon here again at Prior Lake City Hall in the lower-level Wagon Bridge Conference Room. Certainly all attendees are welcome. The PLOC, Project Cooperators Meeting is Thursday, February 15. Again, Prior Lake City Hall, Wagon Bridge Conference Room. February Board of Managers Workshop and meeting will be Tuesday, February 4 p.m. for the workshop in Parkview Conference Room and commencing at 6 p.m. here again at City Hall in the City Council chambers. And that is it for February.
All right, thank you very much. With that, unless there's anybody, I don't believe there's anything else on the agenda except for adjournment. So a motion to adjournment is in order.
So moved.
Moved by Manager Markenberg, second by Manager Burnett. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
You didn't have to do.
That motion carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Good night.